But watching you, being by your side these many days, I can't help but think that Grace did not die with my father. That there is a mighty wheel still churning in the universe, moving all of us forward, and it is each of our responsibility to pay respect to that fate. Worlds will live and worlds will die, and evil will carve its name into the innocent, and good people will do good acts and suffer all the same. And everywhere, girls will be born with their eyes open to the hate ahead of them, and they will wonder if their voice will be heard above the screams. And in that moment of doubt, they will learn, as I have learned, of the legend of Supergirl, who lost everything and kept on walking. And they will settle themselves content in their power, knowing someone out there has survived the storm, and that tomorrow, when malice will make its attempt and help is begged from the heavens, there is a woman waiting. Woman of Tomorrow. 8/18. Supergirl, open bracket, 2026 close bracket, is finally out in theaters across the globe, and as such, after a month of making videos about my favorite character in fiction, it's only right I do my own review of it. But since I haven't really reviewed a brand new major release since way back in my early YouTube days, let me be clear. I'm gonna give you a spoiler-free one-sentence review in just a minute if you haven't seen it. Then I want to do a bit of background, and then we're just going full spoilers, discussing all aspects of this film, and everything I have something to say about after seeing it twice in the last few days. There will be time codes if I've done my job right. So if you haven't seen it and want to know what I, as a lifelong fan of the character, thought of this movie, I loved it. It's really good. Not perfect, not the comic on screen, but a good adaptation in my mind, and a very solid summer action movie with some real heart and pathos to it, and really, that's all it had to be to make me happy. Now, go see it if you haven't and you want to. Do that, and then come back and watch the rest of this, I'm sure, way too long video when you get the time, please and thank you. You know, I can still remember where I was and how I reacted when this movie got announced. I was working at my previous job as a college custodian and actually working on a classroom when I realized it was about time for James Gunn's DC slate to be announced. And I stood there in this big empty room nodding along as he assured us that film, television, gaming, and animation would all be connected from now on, or otherwise signposted. Shazam 2, Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2 would all be super good and important. Superman Legacy was going to be really cool and come out on a specific date, and so on and so on it went until the second to last announcement when he said one of his favorite comics of the previous year was Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And because of that, they would be making it a movie. And when I tell you that I had to sit down in the desk next to me and take some deep breaths because I wasn't sure if it was real or if I was finally breaking from reality, it is no exaggeration. And ever since then, I have been fluctuating back and forth from the most cautious optimism about this movie to sheer terror that it would be bad and I would make a fool of myself taking up for it. When cast members were announced, set photos leaked, or major trailers dropped, I'd allow myself an hour tops to look them over, and then I'd move on and get back to whatever I had going on. When Millie Alcock debuted as Supergirl at the end of Superman open bracket 2025 close bracket, I certainly had a little freak out in the theater and talked about it with everyone I could, but after about a month, I put it out of my head. For weeks now, I've been low effort torturing myself, avoiding spoilers and really any promotional content so as to not get my hopes up too high, instantly swiping away just about everything that hit my feeds, so much so that I probably messed up the way the algorithms see me for a good while. But I did allow myself a few indulgences in the last couple days. I tried the KFC Supergirl meal, which was fine. I mean, it's KFC. They're neither the best fried chicken chain or the worst to me. Though I hadn't eaten there in years, so I was a little thrown by how those herbs and spices just get everywhere if you're not careful. The Lobo ranch sauce was fine, just the most average ranch I've ever had in my life. The Supergirl honey mustard was good, though with the little extra kick they put in it did throw me for a second. Um, though I didn't get the Ruthye sauce or the Ruthye figure, which was the main reason I decided to get it. I've seen like 3 figures of Ruthye made for the movie Tops, and they're all cutesy Funko Pop style things with nothing in the super articulated range I usually go for, which kind of annoys me because she's such a key character, but no, we gotta make all the Lobo figures we can, and I gotta get his little keychain dingus in with my meal. Whatever, I'll just grab a Ruthye off eBay and maybe have another Kryptonian cooler before they discontinue them, because that was the best part of the whole thing. Just a nice blue raspberry soda with some boba balls in it. Also, it had the logo on the cup, so I washed and kept the cup, because shut up. I also had one of the 2 Cold Stone Creamery ice cream flavors on my way to my first showing of the movie, and it was alright. I don't usually like so much solid stuff mixed into my ice cream, so I was a bit skeptical of it, but the kettle corn didn't bother me much, and it all had this really nice, though kinda overwhelming buttery flavor to it. But that's just 2 of the like 24 different brand collabs and promos I've seen for this movie, which has just been dizzying to see for me as someone who spent his whole life thinking of Supergirl as a semi-obscure character and even naively thought at one point that he would try and collect all of her merch over the rest of his life. And, yeah, that's just not happening now. It's no longer at the point where I can be like, oh, I mean, it's never going to feel endless, but there's always going to be something to get. Now it's just like, yeah, no, there's no way to even make a checklist. There's so much stuff. I mean, I never dipped into statues much before, but I'm certainly not spending over $1,000 on one of Kara and Ruthye now, even though it does look spectacular. I may get the Hot Topic hoodie and pajama pants, though, and I had to get the Silhouette popcorn bucket, because, I mean, it's not usually my kind of thing, but when is it ever going to happen again? And you cannot tell me that that is not inspired by Evely's covers from the book. However, I'm sure this is starting to sound a bit like babbling, and it's all really just flavor text, so let's get to the heart of the matter. The film itself. I have never, in my life, felt so relieved leaving a movie. It is as if I've dropped Rock Lee's weights after carrying them for 3 years, and now I can run a marathon. Because no matter what anyone else thinks, I finally have a live action Supergirl adaptation that fits my view of the character, and I won't dread having to watch again. In fact, I've already got the Blu-ray on pre-order, and I have not pre-ordered a physical release of a new movie in over 10 years, and that changed because Anna Nogueira and Greg Gillespie and every member of the cast and crew delivered on a movie that is fun, heartbreaking, and inspiring all at the same time. Supergirl open bracket 2026 close bracket really fits the mold of a spin off movie of a well known franchise because it is an origin for her. And a lot of the origin movie tropes are here, but it does them in a way that feels smart and natural for a one off adventure that is entertaining in its own right, rather than just a 2 hour first act for a better movie that we gotta wait another few years to get. Like, she only wears the costume for maybe the last half hour. And even though I have railed against that trope with other superhero adaptations in the past, I don't mind it here because it is there from minute one. We see she has it and chooses not to wear it when she doesn't have to make Superman happy because she doesn't feel comfortable in it. She doesn't feel comfortable being Supergirl yet because she can't reconcile all her messy feelings about everything she's been through until before the third act, she's forced to just lay there with them for a whole night and realizes what it would mean to actually embrace that symbol. It is just as I guessed that this movie is an adaptation in the truest sense of the word. Things are moved around, a lot is cut, and a few things are changed entirely. But it's all in service of making this story work as the second major movie in the DCU, just as well as the comic does as just another DC miniseries. I'll admit the story structure feels a little weak at times. Some bits do feel a little abruptly scotch taped together rather than having a smooth transition, and you can definitely see where they went back and added a few extra scenes with David Cornsweet as Superman to kind of give fans of that movie a reason to stay engaged. But there's nothing that I look at and outright go, why is this here? It's not just the writing, because I know this is a bit of a hot take, but in its own way, I think this movie looks nearly as good as the comic does. Yes, there is a darker color grade to it, and they go to a lot of brown and black looking planets, but there's almost always a pop of color on screen. Whether it be like a sign in the background, the way the lights are hitting the actors, or just what someone is wearing. And this may be a bit of a reach, but that kind of feels symbolic to me of how harsh space feels in this story and the small bits of kindness that Kara and Ruthye represent within it. The action cinematography is also just incredible. Gillespie's go-to move seems to be spinning the camera around or focusing it in on a single focal point while the action happens all around it. Most often Ruthye, which is such a great way to cinematize the panels of Kara shielding or flying her around, and nowhere does it work better than the final needle drop moment, which felt like such a thematic crescendo of rapturousness to me that was as good as the best Sander Lanches or the crowning of Hangman Adam Page, and honestly puts any slow-mo ramp fight Zack Snyder has ever done to shame, in my opinion. It boggles my mind that so many people are dogging on Gillespie for choosing not to read the comic before making the movie, when Nogueira's script so clearly still inspired him to make so many tiny little choices that are similar to what the comic does. Even with minor elements for another movie, with like how Kara's hair is styled, it's often huge, unkempt, and getting in her face. And to me, that evokes the way a Bilky would draw it, all windswept and curling in the air or the vacuum of space. Heck, even the silent scream moment, which we see a little bit of in the trailers, it's no longer happening inside a sun, but it still feels right out of the comic with how powerful and how similar the reason for it is. The humor is one of the weaker points in the movie, though, as it has jokes, but very few of them landed with me as anything more than, oh, that's a funny line, but not funny enough to laugh with. which is a little disappointing because Superman 2025 brackets all around wove its jokes so well into the story, and Woman of Tomorrow has at least one very solid joke per issue, even though it's generally a pretty serious book. I will say the little CGI character that speaks for the bus driver did always hit, though. Hats off to that voice actor for turning in a solid performance that could have worn out its welcome in lesser hands, or otherwise just been ruined by the trailer showing way too much of it. And speaking of unexpected funny little freaks, wow, the creature design in this movie is good. I actually love that they chose not to directly bring over any of the ones from the books and hide a blue in the background somewhere, and instead they just made a bunch of their own, because they're all neat to look at and feel as much at home in this story as the ones in the book did there. The healer, the screeching alien, friggin' mandibles guy, and Squidward, and so many more in this that just provided little moments of, whoa, what the fuck is that thing? That's awesome! Conversely, I also really appreciate the care with which the Argo scenes were handled. It's literally just 2 flashback scenes, but they feel almost like a tragic short film, and it's almost on par with the opening of Superman the movie for me. There's no continuity porn explaining what is up with Superman's parents beyond a blink and you'll miss it line, and it cuts 2 elements from the comic to make it flow a little better and probably avoid an R rating if we're being honest, but all the weight, all the impact of that story is still there. When Allura tells Kara to be good before succumbing to kryptonite poisoning, I feel that. And when Kara tells Zor-El she would rather lay in the ground next to her parents because her life doesn't matter, and he rebukes it by saying how much it does to him and how much good she can do on Earth, I couldn't help but think of Otto and Mary Binder, and it was the closest I came to actually crying during the movie. But I've delayed it long enough. Let's actually get into the lead characters and the cast of this thing. I actually cleared the time a while back when Millie Alcock was cast as Supergirl to watch all of Game of Thrones and the first season of House of the Dragon just to get an idea for her acting ability, and found it to be a pretty worthwhile endeavor because those were alright shows, and it really prepared me for this take. Millie's Kara isn't as monolithic as the one in the comic this is based on. She's not as light and personable as other live-action adaptations have been, and she's not as hard-edged and rebellious as a lot of the animated ones tend to be. Much like Rhaenyra Targaryen, she is somewhere in the middle of all of that, and this is very much a story about her finding her way through it all. Alcock gives a great performance, whether she's swaggering around alien bars, grieving her home and what the brigands are doing on her ship, or kicking ass across alien wastelands. You always buy it, and she really looks stunning doing it. Especially once she gets the costume on, which is just perfect in my opinion. From the line work that matches Corn Sweat's Superman suit, to the cape, which is made from the same material as Christopher Reeve's apparently, to the big golden belt, which looks right out of the comic, to the biker shorts under the skirt, which have always been a favorite small detail of modern comics to me, and to my knowledge have never popped up in an adaptation until now. However, as is often the case with major female-led superhero projects, a lot has been said about Millie Alcock's physical appearance in this movie and the way she chooses to dress and act outside of it in the lead up to its release. primarily by some of the sorriest excuses for men you will ever meet in your life, which is why I feel the need to comment on this, without saying anything too weird or perverse about a woman who is 3 years my junior and I'll probably never meet. Personally, I think she looks exactly as she should in the film. And outside of it, I really couldn't care less what she does as long as it's all above board. Ridley also does an incredible job as Ruthye. Maybe the best performance in the cast for my money. Made all the greater by the fact that, according to IMDb, this is her first major film. She's only been in like a few episodes of a couple different streaming shows and one of the leads in an animated series from last year that I haven't had the time or interest level to check out before this. Admittedly, she never has any of Ruthie's big freak out or tantrum moments from the comics, which they actually have a whole running thing about in this movie, but there's some moments that come close, and you always buy that she is bottling up and holding in so much because she thinks she needs to get through this and remain on her best behavior so she can get to the other side of all this craziness and kill Krem. And it's only when Kara saves her at the end of the movie and they hug that she finally gets to be a kid again and let it all out. And it's just wonderful to watch. And Jason Momoa as Lobo. What do I even say at this point? The man is having the time of his life. He was born to play this role. I mean, he never outright steals the show, but he has a lot of great moments, and he just feels right off the page, to the point where I actually think I wouldn't mind him popping up now and again in future DC projects, despite not being much of a fan of Lobo comics myself. It is a tad jarring how he appears for the third act, and I do wish he was more central to the plot in general, just for the sake of consistency, but it never feels like he doesn't belong, and despite not actually being in the actual comic this movie is based on, he still manages to work his way in there in a delightful way. Last but not least is Matthias Schoenaerts as Krem of the Yellow Hills. This is not comic book Krem at all, and I think that and his ultimate fate are probably going to be the biggest sticking points for fans of the comic first. But personally, while it took some adjusting, I ultimately decided I liked both changes. As I said in my video about the comic and expectations for this movie, they probably wanted to plus him up a bit to make him seem more cool and imposing and like a real threat to general moviegoers. He's not this scrawny barbarian who let his ego get the better of him and then lucked out by hooking up with a bunch of space pirates. He's the leader of those space pirates, and he looks like more of a threat than Lobo, but he doesn't act like it because he thinks he has Kara and Ruthye all figured out. Oh, there's a little girl coming to kill me? Big deal. I got cages full of them. I can handle her. Supergirl's coming to kill me? No problem. I got my special poison. I got my kryptonite. I'm just gonna walk around like I own whatever place I'm in and eat every single piece of food I come within arm's reach of, which, I gotta say, is a pretty entertaining character quirk for a villain. Seriously, whoever is in charge of casting for Star Trek projects right now, you need to get in touch with this guy and cast him to play a random one-off Klingon baddie for an episode, because he would be great at it. But I cannot talk about Krem without talking about the biggest change from comic to film. The choice to actually have Kara go through with it and kill him. As I said, when I first saw it, I was a little thrown and wasn't sure what to think. But after the rest of the film, I actually decided I think it works. And it works because this film is coming from such a different place than the comic. Woman of Tomorrow is arguably the first modern Supergirl comic to take all of her continuity into account and not pick from one reboot or another. But this movie is the first story about this character. It is not beholden to any continuity that shows she would be against killing a family murdering child sex trafficker. And while I personally think making someone rot in a cell for the rest of their days is a much more fitting punishment for such a thing, the movie doesn't seem to be out to debate that issue. Rather, it takes a slightly different interpretation of the line from the comic that I read at the top of this video. And it goes out of its way to say that Supergirl is willing to take that burden, put this black mark on her soul so that Ruthye doesn't have to, because it will not make her feel better. It will not instantly make the pain in her soul evaporate, but it still needs to be done. And I think that is a valid take. It works for this movie. Even though, if you ask me the question, I would have to say I prefer the comic ending, and was a little disappointed not to see it and a few other things they cut out. But that is just the cost of doing business when you're seeing one of your favorite books adapted to the screen. Just ask any fan of a YA novel from the last 20 years, and they'll tell you all about it. Before I wrap up, I do want to mention that I thought the score was pretty good. There's nothing groundbreaking, but a lot of nice tracks that I'll probably be listening to more in the future, and a Supergirl theme that is finally just good and evocative of the Williams Superman theme without straight up copying it, and most importantly, attached to an adaptation I actually like. I also found all the needle drops really fun, though I was unfamiliar with most of them beforehand, as I'm a bit of a musical Philistine. That being said, though, there is one song I was kind of hoping would make it into a fight scene somewhere, Carpenter Brutt's cover of Maniac, but alas, it wasn't so, and I guess I'm just gonna have to do the fan edit myself when this comes out on digital and I can be bothered. So, what would I score Supergirl bracketing up and down through the town 2026? Gotta get that round. I mean, I'm not a scores kind of guy, but if I gotta, probably 4 stars or a strong 8 out of 10. It's not perfect. It's really not a perfect movie. There's certainly a lot of room for improvement. But it's everything I was hoping for based on what I knew going in, and really, that is all I can hope for. Asking for a literal translation of the comic was always going to be a path to getting lost in the sauce in my mind, and right now, I'm just happy to be here. In a world where, finally, there's a Supergirl movie I genuinely like. And it's based on a comic I genuinely love. And the next time someone asks me, so why is Supergirl, of all characters, your favorite? I can just show them one or the other instead of babbling on and on for ages and giving ultra-specific recommendations that are still somehow confusing to them. And more than that, I'm really happy Tom King, Bilky Evely, Otto Binder, and even Al Pleasantino, the artist that drew Supergirl's first appearance, and I stupidly forgot to mention in my last video, all got their proper recognition in the credits of this movie. Right at the end there, with deepest gratitude, Tom King and Bilky Evely. Special thanks to Otto Binder and Al Pleasantino first, up top, together, separate from all the other names. It's not perfect. I would honestly prefer, in a perfect world, that at the start of the movie, along with all the credits you get there, there's a based on the graphic novel by Tom King and Bilky Evely, and a Supergirl created by Otto Binder and Al Pleasantino credit. But that's still way better than a lot of major superhero movies do. And it's the one thing about this movie that actually made me tear up when I saw it. So, as I said I would, I donated to the Hero Initiative in Otto's name the very next day. This month has been truly extraordinary for me. Just the kind of time a comic book fan dreams of. Even beyond the experience of the lead up to this movie and then going to see it, there's been a lot of stuff going on that you know a little bit of if you follow me on social media, but I won't go into here. Thank you for sharing it with me. Whether you just watched this video or all 5 of the ones I did this month. I don't know when I'll be back to do this sort of thing again, but I doubt this site will ever be rid of me for long. So, good morning, afternoon, evening, or night to you, no matter where you are in the world. I'll see you next time.